my name's Jason. I have Lizzie on the call as well. And the workshop we're hosting today is on looking for jobs and internships. We have a lot of content to cover for you, and it's going to be a really exciting time. So we hope you find this really helpful and informative. Just as a reminder before we get started, please do mute yourself so there's no disruptions, and this workshop will be recorded.
Mm-hmm. And just hold off all of your questions till the end. We do have a Q&A session built in, so just be mindful of that. Yeah, and this is our agenda. This is a list of talking points that we're going to go over so you guys can have an idea of how we're going to time this and just how our structure is going to work.
Okay, so just a little about myself. So I'm an alumni from Circle K. I went to UCSB. I did a double major in econ, math, and stats, and I graduated in 2018. Upon graduation, I went to work for the Navy as a contract specialist, and now I work at Accenture in their technology consulting division. And in school, I was a historian for my club, and I went to a lot of the district events, drove all over the state. Circle K was a big part of my university experience. And on the bottom, you can see that a lot of my facts revolve somewhat around traveling. So I do have a travel blog, and I love traveling. It's just shame during this pandemic that it's not possible to do that right now. But Circle K has led me have a lot of good memories as well. And things like that. So I will hand it off to Lizzie.
All right, so a little bit about me. I'm currently a rising sophomore at the University of Texas at Dallas. I'm working on my BS currently in molecular biology with a focus in research and neuroscience. CKI is a huge part of my college experience too. You know, like Jason said, it's such a blessing. You get to travel, and the leadership opportunities are just so abundant. I am the VP of my chapter. Previously, last year, I was the K Family Relations Chair, and this year I'm really blessed to say that I'm serving as the Texas-Oklahoma District Board Chair. And yeah, I currently work as an undergraduate research assistant in a neuroimmunology lab. We study a lot of cool things like how the brain has its own special immune system and how your diet and thoughts affect your mental health and things like that, and it literally affects your immune system. And underneath you can read a little bit about me with my fun facts and just some highlights I've had in CKI, fave vacation spots. I'm a self-prescribed modern-day hippie. I love yoga and meditation. I love mycology. Mushrooms are my favorite food. I love eating like a good mushroom cream soup. I like mushroom hunting. From Germany, well, my dad is, and I grew up there when I was a kid, and that was something really big part of my culture over there. And yeah, I love animals. And as you can see, read a little bit more about me down below. So just a little highlight, just so we can get this started and just so we can get the energy brewing in this really fun workshop. We're going to be doing a fun icebreaker called Dream Jobs. And if you guys would like to take a picture of this, we're going to break y'all out into small breakout groups so we can have a more intimate feel to this. So if y'all could take a picture of this before we go into our breakout rooms, you're just going to tell everybody your name, school, district, tell us about a dream job. Like for example, mine is working as a researcher in the future with pain studies, a job you do of salary, prestige, humanitarian problems where no object, like if there were no suffering in the world, if you didn't have to worry about money, like I'd be a yoga instructor, and a job that you wanted when you were really young, like I wanted to be a cartoonist. I thought I was going to be the next Jim Davis, the guy who made Garfield. So yeah, go ahead. We'll get you guys in a great breakout group shortly, and just keep that to mind.
Okay, so I'm gonna work on that. All right.
Awesome. All right, folks. Glad you guys all got to connect and just discuss y'all's careers, your dream careers, and your former dream careers when you were like 10. So that's great.
Let me share my screen again. And we're back. Okay. Okay, so hope that was a really great way to get yourself like introduced to other people and we're gonna go on forward. So before I get started, we get started with this. For those of you trying to look for jobs and internships right now, put into the chat what some of the blockers that you guys have been running into. Like what's stopping, what have you experienced that is like an obstacle towards like that goal? And then Lizzie,
I don't think the chat's disabled. I don't think we have one.
Oh, the chat's disabled? Bummer. Okay. Okay, yeah, so just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. If the chat's disabled, that's fine. But yeah, just have your problems in mind, and then we will do Q&A later, but just like keep those in mind as we go through this presentation. Okay, so in general, how the world is shifting towards is that, especially right now, we're in a really unprecedented time because job searching in a good economy is hard enough, but then you add on a pandemic and you add on that it's happening around when a lot of people are graduating, and it's just a recipe for disaster. But the main takeaway here is that you really cannot rely on traditional strategies anymore. The days where you can just like apply online and maybe hear back are nearly impossible, especially right now, because in terms of breaking it down, you probably have like 500, 1,000 applicants to a position, and then how do recruiters and hiring managers break that down? Your odds are not very high, even though if you're a qualified applicant. And through these graphs here, you can see that most people get hired and switch careers when they are referred, or if you're not actively searching, right? And this might seem mind-boggling to some of you, but the key thing here is that in order to get into the profession you want, you have to do a lot of networking on your end, really make sure that you're qualified for whatever position you're seeking, because if you're just throwing your name in the hat and hoping for results, that is not the way to go. You won't see any results. It will be very unlikely, even though it is slightly possible. Okay, so based on my experience, just doing a lot of job hunting and pivoting into an industry that I wasn't really suited for, in a sense, like I came from a non-target school background, but yeah, I was able to still get into consulting. I've broken job hunting down into this interconnected approach you see on the screen. So what this approach really devolves into is that the mistake I see a lot of people make is that they'll approach the job hunt in a linear fashion, where they will say, oh, I will do a lot of networking for like a month, and then I'll apply to a bunch of positions this month, and then etc. But that's not the way to go, because you are constantly evolving your portfolio, and times are also changing. So you have to constantly adapt and make sure that you are applying all three of these aspects. So in terms of networking and assessing yourself and applying, right, combining all of these factors, you really have to know, okay, what does the team and company look for in potential candidates? And in order to kind of like get this insight, you have to do like some networking with relevant people in the industry that are in that position that you want to get into, so you can gain the appropriate insight in order to how to prepare to make that move. And you also have to know what are the required key skills and experiences required in this role/industry. So when you look at job descriptions are usually written in a very broad sense, and it only really tells you about 20% of what the role actually entails. So you really want to use networking chats to really ask the professional what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, what is the company culture like, how do they get to this path, in order for you to gain more insight on how to prepare. And the last part is you really have to assess or if you're actually qualified for the positions you're interested in. So for a lot of career paths, some paths typically require one to have more experience than others. But then if you are pursuing something that is not realistic for what your skills and experiences are right now, you will just keep hitting the wall, and that's not very productive, right? And then once you do get to that stage where you are given an interview, or you have the chance to apply with like pretty good odds, you should most definitely tailor your resume and interview answers
to the position that you're targeting and interviewing for. So as we talk through this content today, this model will be really important in terms of what strategies Lizzie and I will discuss. So just really keep this in mind, because if you do not take away, if you take away nothing else from this presentation, remembering this slide will be the most helpful. So in today's times, LinkedIn is becoming a really big tool that you guys all should all be utilizing, because in this virtual era, a lot of the applications, a lot of the networking, a lot of the job postings are on LinkedIn, and it's a really good tool to use if you know how to use it. So essentially, the goal of networking is that you want to kind of get professionals' insight on everything in terms of what position and industry you want to go towards. So you want to use these cold reach outs as information. And there's like right ways and wrong ways to conduct these reach outs. So how I like to do it is that you want to look for people that share common traits as you do. So either they could be like alumni from your school, you guys share like the same hobbies, or you saw some of the content they posted and you like resonate with that content. And then when you send a connection request on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you're sending a personalized invite. And the reason for this is that a lot of professionals probably get dozens of requests a day from people that they don't know. So that you want to make sure that they know why you're reaching out to them and why they should talk to you, right? So how this breaks down is that you should always have like an introduction. You should always share the commonality you have and how you found them. This is just my personal preference, because I just don't want to come off as too creepy. But the most important thing is this green circle here, where you want to really tell them why you're reaching out, as well as what you're hoping to gain from them, and then going for the ask. And you are probably asking them for like 15 to 30 minutes of their time. So in this example, I wanted to get more insight on the account strategist position at Google, just to like learn for myself. And then the person actually got back to me for a chat, and the person actually ended up offering to refer me to positions at Google. So this just shows how powerful networking is. But then kind of building upon the previous slide that I mentioned, there are also wrong networking approaches as well. So in my personal experience, what I've seen is that people will just kind of go for the ask without trying to build a relationship. And the relationship building part is really important, because you want to get to know a person as who they are, instead of just asking them what you want. And just kind of think of it as like a bank account, right? You have to like make small deposits in order to make withdrawals. But then if you just ask someone for a referral, or you just ask, oh, do you have any open roles for like this position, it sets like a bad precedence for you, because you're not really taking the time to get to know them, and you're not really taking the time to kind of like see how they got to the position they are today, all of that, right? Because everyone is a person. So typically you want to frame your networking as gaining information, because anyone can like give you the things you want, but you have to learn for yourself on what you need to work on to make yourself the best applicant possible, instead of asking people, oh, can you like look at my resume, or can you like pass my information along, etc.
So moving on to a more like at face value part of networking. Networking is such a crucial part of just getting your name out there and just getting to know people. But it's not just about what you say, but it's rather like how you say it and how you convey it, right? So as you see by this diagram here, mostly how you communicate is actually not so much based on your tone and your words, but actually more so like how you take up a presence in your room and how you're intentional with your body language and your space. So how I see it is that body language is a way of just subtly marketing yourself and just marketing your personality and your kind of your vibe to people. And even when you think you're not doing it, you're doing it. So even in just how you stand, you know, if you slouch and you try to take up less space and cross your arms, it can come off that you're a little bit more closed off and that you may not be as confident. But just putting your hands on your hips and standing up straight can do such a wonderful job at just making you take up that presence. Like that's such a key word in this situation here, just presence. And one interaction right off the bat that you want to be mindful of is your handshake. So you obviously don't want to do the dead fish limp, or you don't want to do the death grip where you think you're going to sprain a finger, because the death grip just comes off as kind of overbearing and overpowering, and just like the other person might feel a little bit more put off by that. And kind of the dead fish just kind of shows that you're maybe a little bit more like not as confident or just not interested in meeting this person. So just remember to have a firm but like relatively like moderate handshake. It's good to keep in mind, and just be like, it's important to just like research about what kind of cool instances of body languages are and what they say about you. Just for the sake of time, I'm not gonna list everything off that I've found, but I can give you guys just a few examples. Like if you scratch your nose, for example, it actually, like, a lot of people may perceive you as just being dishonest. If you cross your arms, you look a little bit more closed off, a little bit more closed-minded. And your throat is a very vulnerable part of your body, so if you tend to scratch it or just fiddle at your throat or your necklaces a lot, you may be perceived as vulnerable because that's such a vulnerable part of your body, and you may be perceived as insecure. Showing your arms like this, and this is also a very vulnerable space in our body, so just kind of like being open with these spaces in your body just it portrays you as a more open and more trustable person. But I highly encourage you to go out on the internet and just research more instances of body language just for the sake of time. And one thing to keep in mind is just avoid looking at your clock or your phone or your watch, Apple Watch, whatever, unless obviously you have someplace to go in 5 minutes. Just try to avoid constantly checking the time. It may display you as kind of disinterested and just removed from the situation at hand when you're networking with somebody. And just always remember to be actively listening and polite and kind, and show it too. Eye contact and nods and yeah, and just making vocal cues go a long way. The thing that sets good leaders apart from great leaders is being a really intuitive listener. All right. And next, we have email etiquette. This is just a matter of knowing when to send it, when to pend it. Rule of thumb, don't wait more than 24 hours to reply to an email. If you do, I've had instances where my professors or, my boss has replied to me like a week later with my email. And, everybody's guilty of it. It just kind of, sometimes it can be like a day late and a dollar too short if you get a response to something you were desperately needing in an untimely manner. So just remember that's a good rule of thumb to keep. And if you're swamped, like, just be sure to send the person an email and just say, hey, I'm busy at the moment, kind of like a text, like a BRB kind of thing, but just say that you're busy and you can't answer their inquiries at the moment, and just be sure to respond that you'll get back to everything and all of their questions when you can. So I've had a few people do that, and like in my time, communicating in my work in the lab, and that is that makes me so happy. Like when people do that, that's such an engaging thing. And just in general, try to stray away from acronyms, especially with your boss. I mean, unless it's a really cool coworker, you guys like to text back and forth or send funny memes over emails. Sure, that's one thing. But when you're talking to somebody that especially you haven't met before, try to stay away from acronyms like OMG, even ASAP in some situations. I've been told by one of my bosses in the lab that using ASAP kind of looks unprofessional. I mean, it may just be his opinion. And just especially try to stray away from emoticons with professional people in a professional setting, unless you know that they're your really cool coworker you can bond with. And one good thing to keep in mind is that a thank you message after a meeting or an interview goes a really long way. Even if you don't get the position, the person will know your name and make that connection. And yeah, you get to make an impression. And going forward, you might bump into them again at another professional event, and you might have a second chance and have that really good image that's carried along with you in the next interview or next networking event you go to.
Okay, so I just wanted to take a slide to share about one of my personal networking accounts. So last year around this time, I went to a networking event hosted by Google in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the event was finance oriented. So even though I had no finance experience, I really tried to work on preparing beforehand on seeing what types of translatable skills I had in order to bring value to this event. event. So it's really going back to this. So this part of the model, right, where I had to really assess myself and see how can my experience translate to a finance setting. And then at the event, I was able to network successfully with like the professionals there, and I was able to learn that they were looking to hire for a role in Chicago that they thought would fit my background. So I ended up going through the entire interview process at Google after the event, and I got to the final round. And even though I didn't get the offer, this showed that I was doing everything right, and this just shows how powerful the networking is, as well as the model I had on the previous few slides, because I got all the way to the final round with only utilizing translatable skills. And to get that far at such a prestigious company just kind of shows how important, going back to here, right, how important every part of this is. So that's kind of my story with that. And then on this slide, I just wanted to take like a sample job description I saw online, and I split it up into like three parts, and let's pretend that you're graduating from school. So basically the key thing that we want to kind of explain to you is that you really have to deconstruct the job description and kind of see if you're really qualified for the position. So when I job search now, if I'm looking at a position, I just go right away to the qualifications, because if I'm not qualified for the position, there's no point in me continuing to read if I'm interested or not, right? When you're looking, you should really only be taking like less than 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, but like 3 minutes on each job description to see if you fit the qualification. So if it's a qualification that you have right now, you have to kind of translate it into how it can apply to the position. So I've kind of put this into a hypothetical Circle K kind of scenario, which shows like things you do in Circle K could be translatable, right? And then also an example where you may not have like Excel knowledge, for example, but it's something you can get, and then you want to leverage networking and like personal projects to kind of like bridge that gap. But then sometimes there are kind of listings that you might be interested in, but they require like more work experience or more years in the workforce, and this would disqualify you from the listing. And the reason is that even though it says a plus, companies tend to want to see that you have everything that's listed, even though it's not a requirement. And the reason I say this is because when you look at an application and it says, oh, these things are recommended, chances are there are people in the applicant pool that have all of the things that check the boxes. So then you're competing with people that have everything and are more senior. And it just becomes a matter of, okay, it's a matter of risk versus reward, right? You can always throw your name in the hat if it takes less than like 2 minutes to apply, but then you do have to know that the odds are against you, which is why this is so important. So this kind of goes back to these 2 points I have here, where if this is like a mid-career position, but you're entry level, it doesn't matter how interesting the position is to you. It's just not realistic for you at this time, even though years of experience can be flexible, but there's a point where it's like not flexible, right? And then you have to kind of figure out like if your skills and experiences could be translatable to a stepping stone towards that path, because just because some type of industry or some type of position is close to you now doesn't mean that you can't get into it later. It's just really about taking the strategic steps to figure out if the trajectory is obtainable.
So this is a story personally about just self-assessment and how crucial it is to just pinpointing certain jobs and careers that catch your eye. For example, again, this was pre-corona. I'm really sad it didn't fall through, but in my fall semester, when I first went into my research lab, I was really, really thrilled, and I wanted to do something over the summer. And since I couldn't afford housing in Dallas, and since my family's from Germany and my grandparents live over there, I figured, you know, there's a university 20 minutes away from my house, and you know, I can just live at my grandparents for free for 2 months and just do part-time research. So I emailed several professors, and first of all, before I went willy-nilly and messaged a whole bunch of professors with their different labs, I first had to assess the skills that I already had acquired in my neuroimmunology lab. For example, I can do like certain tissue extraction, like I can extract brains, like nerves, spinal cords. I can do certain procedures like gene testing, things like that. And I obviously knew that, you know, I probably wouldn't have the clout to go into a lab that focuses more on like, I don't know, cardiology, or something that focuses more on like psychology as opposed to like immunology. So I decided I was going to look for particularly just immunology based listings, and or not necessarily listings. At least in my career, it's more spread out just by word of mouth. You know, you just talk directly to professors. There's not really any listings per se. But anyway, so I messaged several professors at the university that was near my house, and I managed to get a response back, and I made sure to really just kind of tailor my resume and my CV just to show that the skills that I'd learned in my lab were relevant to her lab. And her lab was just studying the immunology of like organ transplants and how the body accepts it or whatnot. But it was, you know, a lot of the skills I had were very translatable into her lab, and I managed to just kind of ham that up in my resume and really emphasize that. And basically the gist of her email is, "Oh, dear Mrs. Schmitz, thank you for your email and your interest. We're going to talk about, you know, would you like to schedule a meeting talking about logistics for the summer? We'd like to have you in the lab." And yeah, you know, unfortunately, just because of Corona, it didn't happen. But it just really goes to show, like, when you check your inventory that you have, it's sometimes good to, you know, it's always good to broaden your horizons and try new skills, and always to gain new skills. That's a fantastic thing. But it's also just important, sometimes you have to stay in your lane and just realize what, like, ask yourself, like, what do I bring to the table? What are my, like, natural, like, talents that I have always had? What am I proficient at? So it's always good to keep in mind.
Okay, so I just want to take the next 2 slides to kind of talk about how you can optimize your LinkedIn. So we don't have enough time today to talk about how to like completely refresh your LinkedIn profile. But the most important parts are like the about section and your experience section. So for the about section, you always want to make sure that this is filled out and it doesn't sound generic, because a lot of people have like very generic like explanations, and you want to shy away from that. So the key thing here is that you want to briefly summarize yourself and the skills you bring to the table in like 3 to 5 sentences. And then also for this part, you want to kind of have a little fun with it and show like anything interesting things / hobbies that you have. But just make this like maybe like 1/4 or 1/2 of this, right? Because the bulk of the content will probably be explanations highlighting your skills. But you also want to show like a personal side as well, so then people can start like a conversation with you should they want to do that. And then also in the experience section, what's really key here is that you don't want to have endless bullet points. So a common thing that people tend to do is that they'll like make their LinkedIn look exactly like your resume. And while that is very applicable, because you want your LinkedIn to mirror your resume, it's more so that you want your LinkedIn to kind of be like a snapshot of your resume, because what typically happens is that a recruiter will reach out to you based on what you put out here, and then they'll look into your resume once they email you, and then ask for your resume to get more in depth into like what you did. And then for the interviews, that's when they dig really deep in like what you did. So basically you don't want to have endless bullet points, but you also want something here. You want like some words here, like 3 to 5 sentences. And then also as a bonus, you should always try to see if you can quantify impact and include statistics, because that can show like what type of value you brought to whatever organization you were working for.
All right. So something, since LinkedIn is just an incredible tool, not only for networking, but just looking for certain listings and certain careers you want to pursue. Handshake is a platform that is very similar to LinkedIn, but it's targeted more towards college students who are looking for on-campus jobs, or jobs near campus, or even especially interns. Handshake is an excellent place to find internships. So it's essentially like LinkedIn, and you basically upload your CV, your resume, and it's basically can be viewed by anybody. And the best thing about it is that you can look up certain job titles and specific roles you're looking for, a lot like LinkedIn. And you can also put in your zip code, your location, and the great thing is that if you're looking for careers that are just very broad, like you're looking for something in the engineering sector or like healthcare, then you can kind of whittle it down the more you search and go down the rabbit hole, and you can, of course, save potential jobs that you really like with the gold star button. My significant other, he is on Handshake and is very active on it, and he found his job. He works at a wood shop on campus, and it's been very fulfilling for him. And he didn't even intend. He's like computer engineering major, but just by looking into the engineering sector and going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, he found a listing for the wood shop. The wood shop basically space on campus, and yeah, you might get a job that you don't you'd never think you'd get, but it's a great place just to broaden your horizons. A lot of people I know, especially that are work study students, meaning they get paid to do internships by like certain programs they can apply to. At least on my campus, a lot of people I know in the lab I work in found my lab via Handshake. So it's just a great tool to work with in case y'all are looking for on-campus jobs or internships.
Okay, so now we want to kind of share like our personal stories towards like certain professions that we've gravitated towards. So I just want to share my story of how I got to Accenture coming from a non-target school after graduation. So when I was working at the Navy, I was looking to make a pivot, and I was doing everything that I mentioned previously, and I ended up applying to a military role on LinkedIn. And then I had a phone screen with the recruiter, but I actually didn't qualify for the listing because the role was only available to active duty personnel. But the recruiter liked my background, so he asked me some probing questions. And then that's when I dug deeper into like what I've done and what I'm looking for in the future. So he passed my information along to a team within Accenture. And then a few weeks later, a campus recruiter reached out to me to begin the interview process. So after I went through the whole process, that's when I got the offer. And that's where I am today. So the moral of this story here is that I wouldn't have been to where I am today without using LinkedIn and using the interconnected approach that I mentioned earlier. It was really me trying to constantly figure out what is translatable from my government work to consulting, and then also really trying to figure out what the realistic paths were to my goal, because a lot of the paths that I was considering, I found out weren't realistic through networking, so I could focus on what was actually attainable, and that's how I ended up at Accenture.
So a little bit about my story. So it definitely had a lot of surprising twists and turns to it. From a young age, I knew that I'd always been very passionate about science, and I'd always wanted to get my hands dirty and just go into research and things like that. And I met my freshman mentor. We have a program like that at our school where you're assigned a mentorship with an upperclassman when you're a freshman. And my mentor gave me a lot of resources and directed me to a lot of different labs. So I started just emailing a ton of professors and consulting all these people in academia on campus. And the thing is, I actually didn't want to go into lab initially. I thought this was something that was just going to be reserved for myself just as an upperclassman, but no, and I came from a high school. We didn't have a very proficient science program, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities at my old high school. It was it was kind of discouraging, but college, it doesn't matter what background you came from. It doesn't matter what your experience is. College is just a great place to explore, get your feet in the water, and just doesn't matter. As long as you're enthusiastic about it, you've always got a fighting chance. So I had 1 out of 4 professors accept my application, and we did a group interview. And even though I had, no experience, I did my best to compensate just with enthusiasm and just emphasizing that research has always been my passion. And, also just ham it up, like talk about your translatable skills, like Jason said, and just emphasize your leadership experience that you've had. Got my results, and I was, I got accepted, and I felt really blessed. And I started working 20 hours a week in neuroimmunology research. So yeah. So just super quick recap, just some things to remember. Just go slow and steady, focus on what you can do attainably every day instead of like doing a lot at one time. You can't eat an elephant in one bite. Just trust the process. Rome was not built in a day. You're not going to find a new job overnight. Sometimes you just really have to shotgun it over the past couple of months and just actively look for new and kind of out there positions you can apply for, and just don't be afraid to try new things. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. So don't be afraid to try something different. And just what to do now, just continuously network. It doesn't matter if you're employed or not, just especially CKI. CKI is an incredible opportunity to network. Just get out there, meet new people, and make it about them, not you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't go in with any expectations. Just focus on getting to know the person that you're talking to, and just, as always, continue to keep your resume, LinkedIn, and Handshake polished and looking pristine with all of the things you've experienced. All right, and we'll be moving on to our Q&A. Oh, but first, if you guys would like to take a picture or contact information, just super quick for 20 seconds.
Yeah, so I think we can leave this up here and then start taking questions now,
Yeah.
I think. So we can leave this up here. And then since I didn't know you guys didn't have the chat function, so I think the best thing to do would be, I saw some people could have like the raise your hand function in Zoom. I think that's, so if you have a question, please like raise your hand, and then Lizzie, please like just pick someone and your question, and we'll like tackle it one by one. I assume that there will be lots of questions. I can't see the questions on my end, so
all right, no problem.
yeah.
All right, to participants.
How do you raise your hand? I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that.
Oh, you're good. I believe if you, actually, that's a really good question.
I have the answer. If you go to participants, you press participants, bottom right corner, it should say raise hand.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Bill.
On the bottom bar, there's also a button that says reactions. And if you click on reactions, you can either clap or raise your hand.
That's perfect. All right. Hira
Yeah,
Han.
thank you.
All right. What would you like to ask? Hira Han? Hira Khan? All right. Joey Kane?
Oh, you just move on, yeah.
Oh, that's actually, her name is Hira.
Right?
Right?
Oh, Hira. Okay.
Guys,
Do you have a
there's
question?
an issue with my mic.
Oh, it's fine. No problem. What would you like to ask us?
Oh, okay. So I had a question more for Lizzie, because I'm a little bit more interested in science and the labs that she was talking about.
Wonderful.
I was wondering how you got past that initial nerve, because I also came from a high school where I didn't do much research. So how do you work through the nerve of that, and then also appealing yourself to these professors that are probably getting a lot more people that might have had opportunities in high school to do research as well?
Mm-hmm. So to answer that, I actually was up against, there was one girl in my group interview who was super experienced and did a lot of research in high school. And the funny thing is, she actually got fired, and I'm still employed. It's obviously, I'm not bragging about that, but what I'm saying is that, your experience in high school doesn't necessarily transfer into your experience in college. So the best advice I could give you with that is, like I said, just compensate in other areas by focusing on what translational skills you have. One good thing they don't tell you about the sciences is that you need to read papers constantly, at least in my field. So if you have great reading skills and analytical skills, or just have experience like in a writing club or something like that, that's a great skill to talk about on your resume. But just really target your resume and really ham it up. Don't be afraid to contact numerous professors and just ask people at your university. A great place to talk to is Reddit. Found University Reddits are great places to just have conversations with people in your same fields, a little bit about more of your specific questions, but just have confidence and know that you have skills already that are amazing that you can bring to the table. And some people never do research in college before they go into the sciences. So just know that by going into that and having the will to go into that, makes you a really courageous and ambitious person.
Yeah, I would echo the sentiments that Lizzie said. Those are definitely applicable. But I think I would kind of take it a step further. And if you like do the networking on like Reddit or like on campus, definitely try to get like 15 to 30 minutes of your time in like an informal like coffee chat, just to kind of like learn more about, okay, what is it like working in this specific lab under that professor, right? And they should be able to give you good insights on like what they're actually doing on a day-to-day, but also like what they are really looking for. Yeah.
That's a great point. Because honestly, like at least my boss, like most undergrads work 10 hours a week and I work 20 to 30 hours a week. It's a very demanding job and nobody told me that. So it's always good just to like find out by word of mouth, like how does their lab operate? Just like what are the expectations? Because it might be different than what you would like. So if you want maybe a more rigorous approach or something that's a little bit more lax and fitting with your schedule, it's just always good to just network with people around campus and constantly stay open-minded. All right, Joey Kane.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sending us this deck, the presentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I
Yeah,
shoot
I
an
think,
email to you guys?
yeah. So if you guys want this deck, just add me or Lizzie on LinkedIn or like
Yeah.
email us or whatever, and we can share the link with you for sure. That's
Yeah.
definitely something we can do.
Yeah,
Great,
definitely.
thank you.
I also think that International is collecting all the PowerPoints because I'm hosting a workshop tomorrow. So they're putting them all in the folder. They're also collecting all the recordings and then they're going to distribute them to the attendees.
Oh, wonderful.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh,
I got
That
you.
is
that too,
accurate.
that
Yes.
Yes.
Just
We're going to
a
have all
fun
the
folder.
videos up here in about a week or two.
All right. So y'all just have an abundance of different sources you can get it from. All right. Celine G. Celine.
My question was, I was a little confused on how we can make our LinkedIn profile differentiate from a resume.
Yeah, I can actually go over that, but I'm gonna like switch over to my profile. Lizzie, do you mind? Do you want to like take a stab at it? Just like
Sure.
in a general sense, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah, definitely.
Pull up,
So a little bit about like how I did mine, this is just like, I don't know, this is kind of a quick and dirty way to do it. It's just like find certain paragraphs that like from your resume that you can translate over into your LinkedIn, but just change the wording and obviously make it a lot more concise because on LinkedIn, people aren't going to read through like paragraphs and paragraphs upon paragraphs of information about your experience. So especially with your bio, just try to keep it concise. And like Jason said, keep it a little lighthearted if you want. Something that adds appeal.
Yeah, so Celine, just to like build off of what Lizzie said, right? So this is my personal profile right now on the screen, right? So how to make it different for your resume, because your resume is most likely in the format where you have like education, experience, and then skill / project / whatever, and then like some other things, right? So basically you might have like 6 bullet points on your resume that are like, maybe like half a page long, half a page in terms of like from one end to the other, right? But then in like a LinkedIn profile, it will like kind of look longer. So what I kind of like to do is that I try to condense those bullet points on my resume and then put it into like 3 to 4 sentences, just so that like in like those sentences, they should be, someone reading it should be able to know like exactly like what you did and what your contributions are like to whatever organization that that you were a part of, right? And then also just really having everything like filled out, so to the best of your ability. So really utilizing this headline space to kind of not like just have your like one title, right? But maybe like some skills that you have or are like interested in breaking in towards, because how recruiters use their recruiter function in LinkedIn is that they're filtering you based on like Boolean functions and like location and like skills and other factors, right? So it's really beneficial if you have like this filled out to the best you can. You have your location updated, you're open to work. This is really important. So you can fill out like what types of positions you're open to and things like that. And then have this about section, because realistically, a recruiter is only going to spend like 20 seconds max probably reading your profile, right? So you want to make it really concise for them to get to know like, okay, I have these skills and I want to get into this area, right? And that kind of keeps them like reading more. And you can also feature some content you have, maybe some papers you wrote, things like that. This featured area is really useful. And then let's see, and then the content as well. And then, yeah, so just having everything filled out to like the best of your ability will be really helpful because recruiters are filtering based on like criteria that they want to like fulfill. And yeah, so that's kind of my perspective on that. And then I'll pull the presentation back up.
All right. Hannah Sharma. Hannah, my girl from UTD.
So a problem I had for like making resumes or like presenting like job fairs is like the lack of experience. So what I'm asking is like how to make yourself like stand out versus say other people with more experience in that specific field or whatever.
That's a great question. I think that it's always important to consider that, you know, your resume right now, especially when you're in the middle of just developing your, you know, the beautiful canvas of your college career, is that, you know, don't beat yourself up for not having the most qualifications, but just, you know, just constantly put yourself out there, you know, network and try new engagements like officer positions or try out like a fun leadership camp, things like that. Part-time jobs, like there's so many different ways to get engaged with your community, and the fact that you're in CKI alone is such a great door that can open up so many opportunities for you. But it's just important, you know, you don't necessarily just have to put job experience on your resume. It can be everything from skills to like, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel is a great skill to have, or skills that are specialized for your certain profession that you're aiming to do, or even especially like in the world of the pandemic, there's so many free courses online you can take, whether it be for IT or any sort of specific skill like writing papers. Like there's so many really cool accessible free skills on the internet you can access, and it's never too late to keep developing your resume.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lizzie said. She had like really good points. But I'm just gonna share my screen again, just to like kind of break something down for you guys. And
then just real quick, this session ended at 5:45, and your next session starts in 5 minutes. So I don't want to end this service, but just wrap it up soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good. Yeah, Michelle, thanks for that. But if we don't get to your question, just putting it out there, you can always message me or Lizzie, and we will like answer your questions the best we can. But to answer the previous person's question, so I've just pulled up like a hypothetical job description, right? So what people do is that they'll just like apply with like one version of your resume. And if you're like really interested in this in a specific position, you should kind of break down the job description, as I mentioned. So this is a position at Salesforce that I actually recently interviewed for, just for like interview practice. And so basically they're expecting like around 5 years of experience. I interviewed at the analyst level, so that's like 3 years. But I think what made myself stand out is that I really broke down these requirements here and tried to think about, okay, how has like my experience show that I like meet these requirements, and then make sure that it was in my resume. And then also making sure that whatever they list here, right, just like kind of deconstructing this so that you're trying to read like, okay, what exactly will you be doing on the job? Because this is like a lot of content, right? So you want to kind of just focus on like duties you will actually be doing, and then like kind of move that all into like a Word doc or something, just so it's easier to digest, and then like tailor your resume that way, because a lot of people don't really put this much work into like tailoring their resume. And I would kind of only do this if I had like really good odds of like getting to the next level, right? I wouldn't do this for every single application, but the key thing here is that you want to kind of like break it down and then make sure that all of those elements are incorporated into your resume in whatever fashion, kind of like what Lizzie mentioned. So yeah, let's take the next question before it hits the hour.
All right. Brianna Mustafa?
Yeah, I have a question, I think, for both of you, but as a junior, coming up on, like, as far as, like, internships and everything else, because depending on, because going on what is right now, what happens as far as business and jobs is definitely uncertain, is like a uncertain and a big old question mark. So, like, what do you think someone for me, because personally, I haven't done any of, like, the job fairs at my university. I mean, obviously I've interviewed for certain clubs and organizations though, but that's something totally different than interviewing for a job. So as far as with the future, what should I be doing at this point?
Lizzie, you want to tackle that, and then I can offer my input?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. I think first and foremost, just because the coronavirus has caused obviously, but just because the coronavirus has caused kind of a lockdown of a lot of facilities on our campuses. You know, I'm sure that a lot of these job fairs and a lot of these networking events won't simply cease to exist. Rather, they'll tend to go online. For example, we've had a few summer like networking events at our university, and it's just great. I know that there should be certain offices on your campus, like at least with us, we have like the department of, like, you can talk to the dean of your certain college that you go to within your university. There's like an office of research within our university that's like a department. So if you want to like kind of tune into some networking opportunities, you can network the administrators behind these certain offices in your university and just ask them like, hey, like, is there anything I can do to like join a virtual networking group or a networking seminar, something like that. And even if they have some online jobs, I know my significant other, his job at the fabrication shop, at the wood shop, at his job is simply moved online. So as opposed to like working at the actual wood shop, he's designing websites, videos, things like that. So I'm sure it doesn't, it is definitely very difficult in this climate to find a job because of the pandemic, but there are other online resources, hopefully, that will open up.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then just to build on what Lizzie mentioned, I think what I would highly recommend if I was in your shoes is that I would start networking with people that are in the companies that you want to recruit for, or like companies that come to your school, and start to try to figure out like what is their like on-campus recruiting plan for the upcoming fall, right? Because a lot of the really prestigious companies start their recruiting like probably right now, to be completely honest. So if you haven't started looking into like what companies are doing, like doing this networking, you're honestly already behind. And not to like hurt anyone's feelings, but this is just a reality, right? And then especially with all these changes going on. So definitely try to figure out like what the on-campus recruiting plan is for like various positions you want to go into for like 2021 internship, and then like kind of pick your brain in terms of like everything that I just mentioned, so you can build your profile during the course of this summer so that you're ready for on-campus recruiting in the fall.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So I noticed we're over by a minute, but I'm personally glad to stay on to answer everyone's questions. I'm not sure what the next event is. Lizzie, I don't know yet if you have like the schedule, or Michelle.
But I'm not sure what it is, but your event ended like 16 minutes ago.
Oh, gotcha.
It starts at 6:01. So yeah, this was scheduled to go to 5:45. So I'm way over on my time with you guys and need to get everybody back to the meeting room.
All right. So in that case, if you want, like, we are very accessible. Jason and I are extremely accessible over our social medias and our LinkedIn. So please don't hesitate to give us any questions, or if you guys just want to hit us up and talk about our interests. But yeah, we'd be happy to.
That too.
He loves chocolate chip cookies, so.
I do.
So go for that. But anyway, thank you so much for attending our session. This was a blessing. It was so nice to see you all here today, and thank you for your time.